All right, we've got a problem. We're working with so many clients right now who are looking for a very particular type of property, but it's also the hardest type of property to find on the Oregon coast. We're going to talk about what that type of property is, where you might be able to find it. All that starts now. Hey, what's up everybody? This is Clem with the Oregon Relocation Team coming to you from the Oregon coast. And in this video, we're going to talk about one of the most sought after type of properties on the Oregon coast and also the hardest to find. We're talking about oceanfront properties specifically. So a lot of properties on the Oregon coast are oceanfront or very, very close to the ocean, but we're talking about actual ocean frontage with big sweeping views of the ocean and all of the Oregon coast beauty. Now, there are certainly some outliers here, but we're going to be looking at what you can get in all of the different Oregon coast counties within kind of the most common criteria where you would most likely find these properties to be, but also where most people are looking in terms of size and budget, and overall just the more common criteria that people would be looking for. Now, if this is your first time to the channel or you've been here and you haven't already and you want to get more videos like this, make sure to hit the subscribe button, tap that little bell to get notified every time we drop a new video. All right, so many of the people that we work with moving to the Oregon coast really want the full Oregon coast experience. And of course, the common denominator is the ocean, the beaches and the ocean. And many people would like to live right on the ocean. Now, there are some challenges with that we've talked about in other videos. It's not all rosy living right on the ocean necessarily. You're inheriting some risk in terms of home maintenance and wind damage, things like that, even flood risks. But of course, you can't beat the beauty. You can't deny, being able to walk out on your back porch or back deck in the morning, drink a cup of coffee, or have a barbecue, and you're just sitting there right on the ocean. So the criteria that we're going to look at is at least 3 bedrooms, at least 1.5 bath. Somewhere around 1,500 to 3,000 square feet. Some people want larger homes, some people want smaller. A lot of people moving to the Oregon coast wanting to live on the ocean don't necessarily want more than 3,000 square feet, and you start to get a little bit tight under 1,500 square feet. So that's the window that we'll be looking in. Now, the price range is going to be $800,000 up to $2 million. Most people we talk to just aren't looking over $2 million. And honestly, you're really not going to find much under 800,000 right on the ocean. Again, there are some outliers. It's typically going to be a very unique type of property, whether it's going to, if it's under 800,000, whether it needs a lot of work or it's really, really small, like under 1,000 square feet, for example. Now, we're looking at detached homes specifically, so we're not looking at condos or townhomes, and we're gonna disregard the lot size, the actual property size, because you're really not going to find anything more than maybe 1/5 of an acre that has ocean frontage. Now, again, there are some outliers, but we're looking at what's going to be most common and what most people are actually looking for. And I had to make this video because we're working with so many people right now who are looking for this type of property specifically, and it is just so hard to come by. Now, there's market conditions and things like that play into this if you look at a snapshot in time. But one of the reasons these are so hard to find is because the Oregon coast towns are all very small. So the housing stock is relatively small to begin with. There's only a certain number of homes that are actually on the ocean, and a lot of Oregon coast towns just don't have all that much ocean frontage. So some are a little more inland, some might be more kind of on a river that's going out to the ocean. There's different dynamics, topographically and kind of the landscape of some of these different towns. So, some of these towns are going to have a lot more ocean frontage than others. We'll talk about that in this video. But we've had so many clients that have held out for a year, 2 years, 3 years for the right property, because if they're moving to the Oregon coast, they want to be right on the ocean. And if you are one of those folks that are looking at moving to the Oregon coast and you want to live on the ocean, or if you want to live in any of these coastal communities, not necessarily on the ocean, but maybe even a little more inland, give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, click the link down below in the description of the video, and we can talk a lot more about what you're looking for specifically, what your search criteria is, your budget, your timeline, and put together a game plan for you. All right, so we have a lot of information to cover, and I really want this to be as informative as possible, but I don't want to take an hour of your day to explain everything here. So we're going to go county by county, talk about the towns where you'll have more opportunity for oceanfront homes, and also look at the current inventory. Again, this is just a snapshot in time, but pretty consistent with what we see at any given time and regardless of market conditions. And we're going to go north to south here. So if you are looking for some of the central or southern coast, skip ahead a little bit, or you'll have to continue watching. But we're first going to talk about Clatsop County, the northernmost county on the Oregon coast, where you have Astoria, Gearhart, Seaside, Cannon Beach, and Arch Cape. So this is the county that has probably closest proximity for most people in Portland, really the northernmost 3 counties on the Oregon coast. You can get from the Portland metro area in maybe a couple hours tops. But Clatsop County is where you have Astoria and Seaside, Cannon Beach, very, very popular tourist destination. There is a lot of opportunity for waterfront in Clatsop County, starting with Astoria, where you're really on the mouth of the Columbia River. It's one of the more interesting dynamics when you look at all of the Oregon coast, because you have this, big open river where you have this big open body of water, but you're not necessarily on the ocean. And most of Astoria, the town, is built up on this hill. So, anywhere water facing in Astoria, you're going to get some water views, but you're not on the beach. So you're not going to get homes that are right on the beach, right on the ocean necessarily in Astoria. So a lot of people do look past Astoria for that reason. A lot of people really like Astoria too. So it definitely has a lot to offer, but you're not going to get much in the way of, these oceanfront properties. Now, there are communities like Surf Pines, for example, all up and down the Oregon coast, which is a little bit south of Astoria, that are just these little villages in unincorporated areas of a county. We're not going to dig too far into that. Again, we're going to look at actually what's available at any given point in time, and I'll pick one property from each county to highlight. So going south from Astoria, Warrenton, down into Gearhart and Seaside, you'll get plenty of opportunity for oceanfront here. Gearhart and Seaside are 2 beachfront communities where you can actually find a fair bit of opportunity for oceanfront homes. If you go south, you get into Cannon Beach. Cannon Beach has a lot of oceanfront as well. Similar Arch Cape to the south. Now, Arch Cape is an unincorporated community, a little village in Clatsop County, but this is an area that is very popular, and it's all built up right on the ocean there. So in Clatsop County as a whole, Astoria, not so much. There are, again, some of these little villages, some of these areas where you can find it, but Gearhart, Seaside, Cannon Beach, those are really going to be the top areas to search if you're looking for oceanfront properties. Now, if you run a search right now for Clatsop County, for oceanfront specifically, you're going to find 2 properties. That's it. Again, using the criteria within the criteria that I talked about earlier. So there are some one-offs and things like that. You could spend a lot more. There might be some opportunities for less, but again, within this search criteria, the most common search criteria where we would find it and where most people are looking, there's 2 properties in Clatsop County, and we'll take a look at one right now. Seaside on 12th Avenue. Pretty close to the promenade, which is kind of the main walkway right in town in Seaside. Kind of a classic Seaside house. In my experience, this isn't one that I think a lot of our clients would be looking for necessarily. This would be a great second home, vacation home. It would be a nice rental opportunity. You can see it's older, which a lot of these homes in Seaside are. Has a lot of charm. I mean, there's definitely some cool attributes here, but not necessarily completely turnkey, I would say. You can see this one's at $899, 6 bedrooms, so you can sleep the whole family and more, but definitely gives you an idea of some of what you can get in Seaside right on the beach. Okay, moving on to Tillamook County. Tillamook County, also very close proximity to Portland, but it feels more spread out. It has more of a rural feel than a lot of Clatsop County. Some of these points I'm making are just purely, from observation and subjective. And I think the farming and agriculture and dairy industries in Tillamook County kind of, lend to that observation. But Tillamook County has a lot of really great opportunity for oceanfront properties. In fact, a lot of people, I think, overlook Tillamook County for this type of property, with the exception of maybe Oceanside, because Oceanside is completely isolated from Tillamook. These towns are just maybe about 10 minutes apart. If you're looking in Oceanside, you're going to get oceanfront, and so people who've identified Oceanside as an option, I think already kind of know, that that's an area where you can find this particular type of property. But we're going to start north in Manzanita. Very similar town to Cannon Beach, maybe on a little bit of a smaller scale, but has some really nice opportunities for oceanfront. This corridor from Cannon Beach to Arch Cape to Manzanita is by far and away going to be the most expensive stretch on the Oregon coast. So this search that I ran, there's probably going to be actually a fair amount of oceanfront in that area, over $2 million, but we're just going to disregard kind of the higher tier, considering, again, what we hear from most people. But Manzanita would be a great option. Now, going south in Tillamook County, you start to get into some bayfront as well. So we can kind of think of that as oceanfront. I don't think it has the same dynamic, where a lot of the folks that we talk to also want to be right on the beach and have that beach access. So if you're on a bay, you might be right on the water, have a big, nice open water view, but you don't necessarily have the beach and the ocean frontage like you do in some of these other towns. So from Manzanita, you go around the Nehalem Bay, and then you'll get to Rockaway Beach, which is a similar town to Seaside, but on a much smaller scale. Just a similar feel. The houses feel similar, but there is a ton of oceanfront on Rockaway Beach. It's one of these towns that's kind of long and skinny up and down Highway 101, and there is some residential development on the east side of the highway, but a lot on the west side of the highway that all has that ocean frontage. Now, if you continue down from Rockaway Beach, you'll get into the Tillamook Bay. Again, there are some bayfront towns there that do present some nice opportunities for waterfront. Then you're going to get into Tillamook. Tillamook is a town, probably more so than any other on the Oregon coast, where if you're in Tillamook, you don't feel like you're at the ocean, aside from the weather and the climate and things like that. But you can see the bay in a lot of areas or parts of town, say, if you're in Tillamook. But again, you don't necessarily feel like you're right at the ocean. You have to go due west, again, about 10 minutes to get to Netarts and then Oceanside. Arguably one of the best oceanfront developments on the Oregon coast as far as the scenery, the beauty, really cool houses, really cool architecture. I mean, there's a lot to like about this area. So if you're looking for oceanfront specifically, Netarts, Oceanside are going to be a great option, but a lot of it's built up on a hill, so it's not very walkable. So a lot of people are looking for oceanfront, but they want to be actually on the ocean. The last line of properties, before you get to the ocean, where you can either walk straight off your, back porch down to the ocean, or around the block or to the beach rather, or around the block and down to the beach. So the beach access is also going to be very important for a lot of people that we're working with. Now, if you go south of Oceanside, you can get to a little area called Tierra del Mar. That's really part of Pacific City, and Pacific City is a great oceanfront community. It's on the Nestucca River, but a lot of the town of Pacific City has ocean frontage, so access to the beach, the cool little coastal village feel, it has a lot of the charm that people are looking for. So Pacific City's a good option. And then south of there, you're going to get into Neskowin. So Neskowin, a really cool little coastal village on the Oregon coast. If you like areas like Arch Cape or Manzanita, this has a similar feel in a lot of ways, but it doesn't have any of the commercial development. So if you're in Neskowin, there's just a little general store and a little cafe. You're going to have to get north up into Pacific City, or south probably down into Lincoln City to do grocery shopping and things like that. But Neskowin has some really nice opportunities there. And that concludes Tillamook County, where currently we have 5 oceanfront properties for sale within the criteria that we're searching for. Let's take a look.
All right, can't ignore this one. This one is courtesy of Courtney Field with Sand and Cedar Realty. Such a cool house in Pacific City. You know, you can find these really incredible properties with this really cool, unique architecture right on the beach. Something that you can find up and down the coast. And here in Pacific City, you know, you have this stretch along Ocean Drive where you can get some of this. I mean, this house is just incredible. 1.799999, so just about 1.8 million. But if you look at this house, I mean, you know, all the architectural features, you know, all the finishes, super unique. I mean, a ton of style, even if it's not your style necessarily. Definitely a very cool home to see. So this is one that I had to put out there. This one is definitely more unique. A lot of what you get is more cut and dry on the Oregon coast, but this one is definitely a sight to see.
Okay, now we're going to talk about Lincoln. This is where we start to get into the central Oregon coast and probably the top destination for people that we hear from and people that we work with. Lincoln County is very diverse. There's a lot to offer. There's two pretty large towns, so little population centers, being Lincoln City and Newport, and a lot of ocean frontage. So you can still get to Portland, you can get to Salem very easily. So if you wanted to get inland some, you know, from time to time for medical services or shopping, whatever it may be, the access is still there, but you are a little more removed from Portland. But I would say, you know, this area, just like Tillamook and Clatsop County, still very heavy on tourism. You're still going to get a lot of traffic. It's going to be busier in the summer. So you're not necessarily, you know, getting away from that as much. But Lincoln County, again, a top destination. And the northernmost town is Lincoln City. So Lincoln City is one of these towns that is really long and skinny. I think it's like a 7-mile stretch from north to south, all oceanfront. So again, kind of like Rockaway Beach, but on a much larger scale. There is some development on the east side of the highway, but there's a ton of residential development all up and down Lincoln City on the west side of the highway. And Lincoln City probably has the largest volume of oceanfront properties on all of the Oregon coast, again, because it is such a long stretch. So if I'm looking for oceanfront, Lincoln City is probably the first place that I'm going to look. Partly too because Lincoln City stretches all the way down to the Siletz Bay, and then south of the bay you have Salishan, which is a big HOA community, then you have Glen Eden Beach, and then you have Lincoln Beach that really almost touches Depot Bay. So really from Lincoln City down to Depot Bay, you have a ton of ocean frontage and oceanfront development where you're going to have a lot of opportunity to be right there on the ocean. So continuing south again, you get into Depot Bay, a lot of oceanfront development there, not a lot of beaches to access on foot. So that is a sacrifice that you make living in Depot Bay compared to, say, like Lincoln City, which arguably, you know, the best beaches and beach access on all of the Oregon coast. Going from Depot Bay, you're going to get into, there's like Otter Rock and some smaller communities, and then you get into Newport. Now Newport, really, the Yaquina Bay is kind of the, you know, center point. The bayfront is like this big commercial district, a lot of tourism and shops and things like that. But you also have Nye Beach in Newport. North of Newport, you have like Agate Beach, for example. So there's a lot of good oceanfront and a lot of good beaches in Newport, despite the bay really being kind of the focal point of Newport specifically. And then South Beach too, getting south of Newport, which is going to get you all the way down through Seal Rock and into Waldport, where Waldport, especially on Bayshore on the north side of town, a ton of oceanfront development. Continuing south, you'll get to Yachats, where again, not as much beaches and beach access in this area necessarily, but a ton of development, you know, on that west side of the highway, you know, all the way down through Yachats. So from Lincoln City to the north to Yachats to the south, Lincoln County, again, probably pound for pound, the best place to be looking if you're looking to be right there on the water. And currently in Lincoln County, there are 8 properties listed, again, within the criteria that we specified. Let's take a look at one.
All right, this one is in Lincoln Beach. Actually, it's in Coronado Shores, which is an HOA community just south of Lincoln City. So it's a Lincoln City address, but it's a little bit of a different community. But right at $1 million, right on the ocean, walk down to the beach. This is pretty typical of what you're going to find around $1 million, maybe starting at around 900,000, depending on the condition and everything. But you can see, it's a couple thousand square feet, 3 bedrooms. You can see all the wood paneling, these kind of shiplap panels and the, natural wood tones. Really cool just feel in this house. And I've actually been through this one a couple of times. So this is pretty, close to what you could expect, right around that $1 million mark. And again, it's really the view that is going to be what adds the premium, the view and the proximity to the beach. And that's going to be pretty consistent in really just about any town on the Oregon coast.
Okay, next we'll talk about a couple of counties that aren't actually coastal counties. So south of Lincoln County, you get into Lane County and into Florence, which, Lane County is where Eugene is. I think the second largest city in all of Oregon. So just a little sliver comes out to the coast and you have Florence in Lane County. Florence, a really, really popular destination, checks a ton of boxes for a lot of people. Definitely a little bit of an older community. It's very flat, it's very walkable. So there's a lot to like, in particular if you are nearing or currently retired. And there's not a ton for oceanfront in Florence. You have to go to Heceta Beach, and there are some stretches, right on the water in Heceta Beach. And overall, it's kind of a beachfront, oceanfront community, this north side of Florence in Heceta Beach. But most of Florence isn't right on the ocean. So that is a sacrifice, at least potentially for some, if you like Florence. But, if you're looking for this real oceanfront type property, it's going to be a little bit harder to find in Florence. Now, if you move south, you'll get into Douglas County, which similarly, Roseburg is in Douglas County, a larger town. You get into Reedsport, where, again, Reedsport is right on the Umpqua River. You have to kind of wind out to Winchester Bay to get right on the water. Winchester Bay is one of those really kind of small little villages where you can be on the water, get some water views. But I think for a lot of people looking for the type of property that we're talking about, Florence, again, despite being a great place, it's not going to have a ton of options. And then Reedsport is smaller, Winchester Bay, smaller towns with not as much opportunity to have this ocean frontage. And that's illustrated by only one property being listed from Florence down to Reedsport that's within this criteria we specified. Let's take a look at it.
All right, this is one of those rare oceanfront properties in Florence. This is courtesy of Andy Johnson with Coldwell Banker up there in Heceta Beach. So you can see just 1,500 square feet listed at $925, but you can see the ocean right behind the house. And it's just about all you could ask for. If you compare this to the one we looked at in Pacific City, a little more basic in terms of the layout and everything, but definitely has kind of that beach house feel, big windows letting in all the natural light, and of course allowing for the ocean views right there. It's going to be harder to come by something like this in an area like Florence, but they are out there.
Okay, next we're going to look at Coos County. Also a very popular destination that we get a ton of inquiry about. And this is an area that's going to be well suited for a lot of people, but if you're looking for, this beachfront, waterfront property, 800,000 up to 2 million, there's not going to be a ton of options in Coos County, North Bend, Coos Bay. Bandon is probably where you're going to find most of it, but Bandon is a much smaller town, so inventory is low, or rather the housing stock is small, so inventory is always going to be relatively low when we're talking about oceanfront specifically. If we run a search for this area, there are 0 properties currently listed that meet this criteria. So Again, if you really, really like this area, you can hold out and probably find something, again, in particular in Bandon. But on the west side of Coos Bay, when you start to get past Empire, or over to Charleston, for example, or on the west side of North Bend, you can get properties that have, these big, nice ocean views. But for as big as these towns are, in particular North Bend and Coos Bay, really kind of the population center of the Oregon coast, there's not going to be a ton of options for oceanfront. Now, you have this big, beautiful bay in Coos Bay in this area, and a lot of the residential development is built up at elevation. There's a lot of areas here where you can get really nice views of the bay. So it reminds me of Astoria in that way, where a lot of the development is at elevation, kind of up on a hill, and you're not necessarily looking at the ocean, but you can get big water views. In Astoria, it's going to be the Columbia River. In Coos Bay and North Bend, it's going to be Coos Bay. And then Bandon, in particular on the south side of town, you have this nice big bluff overlooking a beach. Big, beautiful homes up there, really nice opportunities, but there's only so many of them. So, currently, like, seeing nothing for sale, for example. So this might be an area that you identify as the perfect option for you, and it might make sense to hold out for it, but, as illustrated through this search, it's going to be hard to come by. Okay, if you've made it this far, I appreciate it. We're lastly going to talk about Curry County. So the most spread out and least populated county on the Oregon coast. Still a very sought after area. A lot of people inquire about, in particular, Brookings, all the way to the south, almost to California. But you have Port Orford, Gold Beach, and Brookings. Port Orford, you do have some opportunities here to be, more or less oceanfront and to have nice big ocean views, but a small town, not a lot of opportunity there. You get down into Gold Beach, and Gold Beach is, mostly built with ocean frontage. You have the Rogue River coming out here, so you can get some riverfront here too as well. So you have some really nice, unique views and landscape in Gold Beach. A lot built on the west side of the highway where you might not necessarily have a straight on ocean view, but there are a lot of areas where you can be very close to the ocean and walk to the beach. And then when you get down to Brookings, a larger town, more on par with like a Florence or a Newport or Lincoln City, for example, Astoria, it's one of the larger towns on the coast when you look at Brookings and Harbor, and you have the Chetco River coming out here too, so you do get some waterfront. On the river, you get some river views. But I would say in Brookings, there is quite a bit of development on the west side of town as well, kind of up and down the coastline, where you can get honestly, some of the most beautiful ocean views on all of the Oregon coast because of the cliffs and rock formations. Sam Boardman Scenic Corridor just to the north of town. So there's no shortage of beauty in this area. Again, you can find some of that oceanfront. You're not going to get a ton where you are oceanfront, walk to the beach necessarily, like you can get in areas like Seaside, up to the north, Lincoln City, for example, some of the areas that we've talked about. And if you run a search right now for Curry County for the criteria we talked about, there's 3 properties that match the criteria. So, again, a less populated county, this housing stock is going to be small. So in and of itself, you expect to find kind of less at any given time. Well, let's take a look at one.
Okay, here's an oceanfront property in Port Orford, which, this is going to be an area where you'll have fewer oceanfront properties in Curry County than Gold Beach and Brookings. This is courtesy of Karen Kennedy with RE/MAX. You can see 935, 1,800 square feet. So compare this to that Florence oceanfront home at 925. You can see definitely a little bit of a difference here, but you can also see that there's not a ton of homes around this one, so this isn't a very populated area. Now you get more privacy, definitely, but you're not going to have as many amenities in town, being closer to like a Florence, for example, when you're in an area like Port Orford. But obviously very beautiful, really cool style with this kind of balcony and area upstairs. You got the wood-burning fireplace, the wood stove. Looks like they've done some nice updates. Really cool house. Looks like a large lot, too. So, this gives you an idea of something you could get maybe on the southern Oregon coast.
All right, so if you were thinking about moving to the Oregon coast and you're holding out for an oceanfront home, it could be difficult, especially if you're just narrowed to one specific town or even one county. You can be waiting a really long time to find the perfect property. So it either is going to take patience or making some exceptions as far as what you're getting. You know, maybe your view's a little smaller. You know, maybe you can have great ocean access, but not the view necessarily, or vice versa. You could be way up at some elevation, but not necessarily have the ocean frontage. So, you know, there's a number of ways that we can approach this. It's something that we help people with all day long. And if you want to chat more about searching for this type of property, give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, or click the link down below in the description of the video. Schedule a Zoom call with us and we can dig into it. Now, if this video is helpful, make sure to hit the like button. That helps us out a lot. If you want to get more videos like this, make sure to hit the subscribe button, tap the little bell to get notified every time we drop a new video. As always, really appreciate you watching. Until next time, we'll talk to you later.